The dust-laden horizon swallowed the sun, painting the Montana Territory sky in hues of amber and crimson, as Noah Parker guided his weary horse across the barren stretch of prairie. The year was 1876, a time when the West was still wild and unforgiving, when a man's worth was measured by the strength of his word and the steadiness of his aim. Noah had spent the better part of 3 years working cattle drives from Texas to Montana, saving every dollar that didn't go toward whiskey or the occasional new pair of boots. At 28, he had finally purchased a modest plot of land with a small cabin tucked away near the foothills, far enough from the nearest town of Silver Creek to offer solitude, but close enough to sell his horses when necessary. The day had been long, his muscles aching from breaking in a particularly stubborn Mustang. As he crested the hill that led to his property, something unusual caught his eye. A dark shape collapsed near the creek that bordered his land. Noah narrowed his eyes against the fading light, his hand instinctively moving to the Colt revolver at his hip. "Easy, Thunder," he murmured to his chestnut gelding, approaching the mysterious form cautiously. As he drew closer, the shape took on a human form, a woman, lying face down in the dirt. Her dress, once possibly blue, was now torn and covered in a thick layer of trail dust. Her dark hair had fallen loose from what might have been a neat arrangement, now tangled with twigs and grime. Noah dismounted quickly, his boots hitting the ground with a thud as he rushed to her side. "Madam," he called, kneeling beside her still form. "Madam, can you hear me?" With gentle hands, he turned her over, revealing a face marred with bruises, one eye swollen shut, a cut across her cheekbone, dried blood at the corner of her mouth. Despite the injuries, he could see she was young, perhaps in her early 20s. Her eyelids fluttered, and she recoiled from his touch, a small cry escaping her cracked lips. "It's all right," Noah said, his voice low and steady as he would use to calm a spooked horse. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her good eye opened a striking hazel that seemed to reflect the dying sunlight and focused on him with fear and confusion. "Water," she whispered, the word barely audible. Noah reached for his canteen, uncorking it and gently lifting her head to help her drink. She took small sips, coughing slightly as the water hit her parched throat. "What's your name?" he asked, scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit or danger. "Felicity," she managed, wincing as the movement of speaking pulled at her split lip. "Felicity Owens. I'm Noah Parker." "This is my land you're on. What happened to you?" She tried to sit up but gasped in pain, her hand moving to her ribs. "They took everything," she said, her voice breaking. "The stagecoach ambushed. They killed the driver and the guard." Noah nodded grimly. Stagecoach robberies weren't uncommon in these parts, but most bandits would at least leave the passengers alive if they didn't put up a fight. "How long have you been out here?" he asked, noting her sunburned skin and the state of her wounds. "Since yesterday, I think." Her voice trembled. "I walked as far as I could, then I couldn't anymore." Noah made a quick decision. "My cabin's just over that ridge. I need to get you there before night falls. Can you ride?" Fear flashed across her battered face. "I don't know if I can." "You're hurt badly," he said, his tone gentle but matter of fact. "You'll heal slow, I'll wait, but right now we need to get you someplace safe." With careful movements, Noah gathered her into his arms, trying to ignore her wince of pain. She was lighter than he expected, her body frail beneath the torn fabric of her dress. He mounted Thunder with practiced ease, settling Felicity in front of him, one strong arm securely around her waist. "Hold on as best you can," he instructed, and she nodded weakly, gripping the saddle horn with trembling fingers. The cabin appeared as they cleared the ridge, a simple structure of rough-hewn logs with smoke curling from the stone chimney. Noah had lit the fire that morning, expecting to return before it died out. Small mercies, he thought. He helped Felicity dismount, practically carrying her into the cabin. The interior was sparse but clean: a wooden table with 2 chairs, a cast-iron stove, a narrow bed in one corner, and a few shelves holding supplies. A worn rag rug covered part of the plank floor, and several hooks on the wall held Noah's spare clothing and gun belt. "It's not much," he said, suddenly aware of how humble his home appeared. It's shelter, Felicity replied softly, her good eye taking in her surroundings. Noah settled her on the bed, then moved to stoke the fire and light the oil lamp that sat on the table. In the warm glow, he could see her injuries more clearly, and his jaw tightened at the extent of the damage. "I need to tend to those wounds," he said, "and you need food and rest." "Why are you helping me?" Felicity asked, wariness creeping into her voice. Noah paused as he reached for a basin to heat water. It was a fair question. Out here, kindness often came with expectations, and a lone woman had every reason to be suspicious. "Because it's the right thing to do," he answered simply. "And I was raised to believe that matters." He set about preparing a simple meal of beans and bacon while water heated for washing her wounds. Felicity watched him move around the cabin, her posture tense despite her exhaustion. "Where were you headed?" Noah asked, breaking the silence. "Silver Creek," she replied. "My aunt lives there. After my parents died of influenza last winter, I sold our farm in Missouri and was going to join her." Noah nodded. "Silver Creek's about 20 miles from here. Sheriff Fletcher's a good man. Once you're well enough, we can report what happened." "They took everything," Felicity repeated, her voice hollow. "All the money from the farm sale, my parents' keepsakes, everything I owned in the world." Noah served her a plate of the hot food, which she accepted with shaking hands. "Eat what you can," he encouraged. "You need your strength." While she ate, Noah gathered clean rags, a bottle of whiskey, and a tin of salve he kept for cuts and burns. When she finished her meager meal, he pulled a chair beside the bed. "This will sting," he warned, dampening a rag with whiskey, "but it'll help prevent the wounds from festering." Felicity nodded, steeling herself. She flinched as he carefully cleaned the cut on her cheekbone, but didn't cry out. Her resilience impressed him. Many a hardened cowhand would be cursing under the same ministrations. "Your ribs might be broken," Noah said as he finished tending her visible injuries. "I can wrap them," but he stopped, suddenly aware of the impropriety of what he was suggesting. "I'll manage," Felicity said quickly, a flush creeping up her neck despite her pallor. Noah cleared his throat. "I'll sleep by the fire tonight. You take the bed." "I can't put you out of your bed," she protested. "You're not. I've slept on harder ground with less reason." He stood, collecting the dishes. "There's a nightshirt of mine you can use if you want to change. I'll step outside while you do." True to his word, Noah gave her privacy, using the time to tend to Thunder and secure the small barn for the night. When he returned, Felicity had changed into his oversized shirt, her torn dress folded neatly despite its ruined state. She looked small and vulnerable in the bed, her dark hair spread across his pillow. Noah arranged his bedroll near the fireplace, keeping a respectful distance. "If you need anything in the night, just call out," he said, settling down with his back to her. "Mr. Parker," Felicity's voice came softly through the dimly lit cabin. "Thank you, Noah," he corrected gently, "and you're welcome, Miss Owens." "Felicity," she returned, the ghost of a smile in her voice. As Noah drifted toward sleep, he found himself wondering about the woman fate had delivered to his doorstep, and what tomorrow would bring. The first rays of dawn filtered through the cabin's single window, casting long shadows across the floor. Noah woke instantly, a habit formed from years on the trail where slow risers often didn't rise at all. He glanced toward the bed, relieved to see Felicity still sleeping, her breathing even if shallow. Moving quietly, he stoked the fire and put coffee on to boil, then slipped outside to tend to the morning chores. The early October air carried a hint of the coming winter, and frost glittered on the tall prairie grass surrounding his cabin. After checking his small herd of horses in the corral and making sure Thunder was properly fed, Noah returned inside. Felicity was awake, attempting to sit up despite obvious pain. "Easy now," Noah said, hurrying to her side. "There's no rush, I need to." She gestured vaguely, a blush coloring her cheeks beneath the bruises. Noah nodded in understanding. "There's an outhouse just behind the cabin. Can you walk if I help you?" With his support, Felicity made it outside, her steps faltering but determined. When they returned to the cabin, she was exhausted from the short journey, her breathing labored. "I've never felt so useless," she said as Noah helped her back to the bed. "You've been beaten, possibly robbed of all you own, and left for dead. Noah replied, pouring her a cup of coffee. I'd say you're entitled to a few days of being useless. A small smile touched her lips, though it clearly pained her. Is that your professional opinion, Mr. Parker? It is, and I thought we agreed on Noah. Noah, she repeated, accepting the coffee with a nod of thanks. As she sipped the hot brew, Noah took the opportunity to properly assess her condition in the morning light. The swelling around her eye had increased overnight, but the cut on her cheek looked clean. Her movements suggested pain in her torso, confirming his suspicion about her ribs. I need to ride into town for supplies, Noah said after a moment. You need proper food, bandages, and a doctor should look at those ribs. Alarm flashed in Felicity's good eye. You're leaving, just for the day. I'll be back by nightfall. He hesitated, seeing her fear. Unless you'd prefer I stay, the supplies can wait. She shook her head slowly. No, you're right, we need supplies. She paused, but I'm afraid to be alone. What if they come back? Noah considered this. The likelihood of the same bandits finding his isolated cabin was slim, but her fear was understandable. My Winchester's loaded, he said, nodding toward the rifle mounted above the door. Do you know how to use it? My father taught me to shoot, she affirmed, her chin lifting slightly. Noah nodded approvingly. I'll leave it within reach, but I doubt anyone will come. Few people even know this cabin exists. He prepared a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush sweetened with the last of his molasses, then made sure Felicity had water and jerky within reach before preparing to leave. I'll bring back something to help with the pain, he promised, shrugging into his worn leather coat. Noah, Felicity called as he reached the door, please be careful. The genuine concern in her voice caught him off guard. It had been a long time since anyone had worried about his well-being. Always am, he assured her with a tip of his hat. The ride to Silver Creek took nearly 2 hours at a steady pace. The town had grown since Noah had first arrived in the territory 3 years earlier, boasting a general store, saloon, small hotel, blacksmith, and even a proper church. It wasn't much compared to the cities back east, but it served the surrounding ranches and farms well enough. Noah's first stop was the sheriff's office, a squat building next to the jail. Sheriff Tom Fletcher was a barrel-chested man with a graying mustache and eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. Noah Parker, he greeted, looking up from his desk. Don't usually see you in town unless you're selling horses or buying supplies. It's the latter today, but I've got something else to report. Noah removed his hat as he entered. Stagecoach robbery, passengers killed except for one woman who managed to escape, found her collapsed on my property yesterday. Fletcher's expression darkened. The Denver stage. We got word it never arrived, sent a search party this morning. He leaned forward. The survivor, she all right, beat up pretty bad, left for dead, I reckon. She walked for a day before collapsing. Name's Felicity Owens, says she was coming to join her aunt here in town. Owens. Fletcher frowned. Must be Martha Owens' niece. Martha mentioned expecting family. He pulled out a pencil and paper. What can she tell us about the robbers? Not much yet. She's still in rough shape. Said they took everything she had money from selling her farm back in Missouri, family keepsakes. Fletcher made some notes. I'll need to talk to her when she's able. In the meantime, I'll send word to the territorial marshal. These might be the same gang that hit the stage from Cheyenne last month. Noah nodded. She'll need time to heal up. I told her I'd wait. The sheriff gave him a considering look. Mighty generous of you, taking in a stranger like that. Couldn't leave her to die, Noah replied simply. No, I suppose you couldn't. Fletcher stood. I'll ride out to your place tomorrow to talk to her, might be able to give us a description. She needs medicine and proper food first, Noah insisted, and her aunt should know she's alive. I'll inform Martha myself, Fletcher promised. You go get those supplies. Noah's next stop was the general store where he purchased bandages, laudanum for the pain, canned goods, flour, sugar, and other necessities. Mrs. Wilson, the storekeeper's wife, raised an eyebrow at the quantity. Stocking up for winter already, Mr. Parker? She inquired. Something like that, Noah replied, not wanting to invite gossip by mentioning Felicity. His final stop was the doctor's office. Doc Harrison was tending to a young boy with a broken arm, but his wife, who assisted him in his practice, provided Noah with liniment for bruises and instructions for binding broken ribs. If the patient coughs up blood or the pain gets worse, bring them in immediately, Mrs. Harrison warned, her stern expression softening slightly at Noah's obvious concern. And make sure they rest. Broken ribs need time to heal. You'll heal slow, I'll wait, Noah murmured, repeating his promise to Felicity. Pardon, Mrs. Harrison asked. Nothing, Noah replied, tipping his hat in thanks. Just reminding myself of something. With his saddlebags full and additional supplies tied securely to Thunder's saddle, Noah began the journey home as the afternoon shadows lengthened. His thoughts kept returning to the injured woman in his cabin. In his 30 years, he had grown accustomed to solitude, preferring the company of horses to people. Yet something about Felicity Owens' quiet courage stirred feelings long dormant. It was nearly dusk when Noah approached his cabin, relieved to see smoke still rising from the chimney. As he dismounted, the door opened, and Felicity appeared, Winchester in hand. Her stance was unsteady, but her grip on the rifle was sure. It's just me, Noah called, raising his hands in mock surrender. Though I'm glad to see you're able to defend yourself. Felicity lowered the rifle, relief washing over her bruised features. I heard a horse and wasn't taking chances. Smart woman, Noah approved, gathering his supplies. Though you should be resting, not standing guard. I got restless, she admitted, stepping back to allow him entry, and worried. The simple admission warmed something in Noah's chest as he carried his purchases inside. The cabin was tidier than when he'd left it, the bed made, dishes washed. Despite her injuries, Felicity hadn't been idle. You didn't need to clean up, he said, unpacking the food and medical supplies onto the table. I'm not used to sitting idle, she replied, carefully returning the rifle to its place, even if I can only move at half speed. Noah noticed she had changed back into her torn dress, despite its sorry state. I brought you something, he said, reaching into one of the saddlebags. He pulled out a simple calico dress and a nightgown. Mrs. Wilson at the store helped me guess the size, said these were unclaimed from an order. Felicity touched the fabric reverently, her eyes welling with tears. I don't know how to thank you. No need for thanks, Noah said gruffly, uncomfortable with her emotion. Couldn't have you wearing that torn dress forever. He busied himself with the other supplies. I spoke to the sheriff. He knows you're safe and has informed your aunt. He'll ride out tomorrow to take your statement about the robbery. My aunt knows I'm alive, Felicity's voice caught. Thank God, she must have been so worried. Sheriff Fletcher said she'd been expecting you, Noah confirmed. I also got medicine for the pain and something for those ribs. The doctor's wife says you need to be wrapped properly to help them heal. Felicity looked down at her torso, then back at Noah, the same blush from earlier returning to her cheeks. I can manage, she said quietly. Noah nodded, understanding her modesty. I'll prepare something to eat, then give you privacy. As Noah cooked a more substantial meal than either of them had eaten the previous day, Felicity sat at the table, watching him work. The silence between them was surprisingly comfortable. I spoke to your aunt while in town, Noah said as he served the food. Martha Owens runs the millinery shop, right? Felicity nodded. My mother's older sister. I haven't seen her since I was a child, but we corresponded regularly. After my parents died, she insisted I come live with her instead of trying to run the farm alone. She seemed relieved to hear you were safe, if worried about your condition, Noah said. She wanted to come straight out here, but the sheriff convinced her to wait until tomorrow when he makes the ride. I'll be glad to see her, Felicity said, though something in her tone suggested conflicting emotions. After their meal, Noah provided Felicity with the privacy to change into the nightgown and showed her how to wrap her ribs with the clean bandages he'd purchased. The laudanum will help with the pain, he explained, measuring out a small dose. But don't take too much. It's powerful stuff. Felicity accepted the medicine gratefully. As the pain eased, her tense features relaxed and she settled more comfortably on the bed. Tell me about yourself, Noah Parker, she requested softly. How does a man like you end up alone in a cabin on the Montana frontier? Noah leaned back in his chair, considering her question. Few people had ever asked him about his past, and fewer still had shown genuine interest in his answer. "I was born in Pennsylvania," he began. "My father was a blacksmith, taught me the trade, but I never took to it like he hoped. I preferred working with horses." He paused, remembering. "When the war came, I was 17, lied about my age and joined the Union cavalry. Spent 3 years fighting." "You saw combat?" Felicity asked quietly. Noah nodded, his expression somber. "More than I care to remember. After Appomattox, I couldn't go back to the anvil and hammer. The war changed everything, how I saw the world, what I wanted from life. So you came west, not right away. Drifted for a while, worked cattle drives from Texas north, saved my earnings, learned to break and train horses." He gestured to the cabin around them. 3 years ago, I had enough to buy this land. It's not much, but it's mine." Felicity's gaze was thoughtful. "And you're here alone, no family?" A shadow crossed Noah's face. "My parents are gone, had a brother, but he didn't come back from Gettysburg." "I'm sorry," she said, and the simple sincerity in her voice touched him. "Life has its hardships," Noah replied with a slight shrug. "We endure." "Yes," Felicity agreed, her fingers absently touching her bruised face. "We do." They talked until the laudanum began to make Felicity drowsy. Noah banked the fire for the night and returned to his bedroll on the floor, more at ease in his own home than he had been in years. Morning brought a clear sky and the distant sound of approaching horses. Noah, already awake and dressed, peered through the window to see Sheriff Fletcher riding alongside an older woman on a bay mare. He glanced at Felicity, who was just stirring. "Your aunt's here," he informed her. "With the sheriff." Felicity sat up quickly, then winced at the movement. "I need to dress," she said, reaching for the calico dress Noah had purchased. "I'll greet them outside, give you a few minutes," Noah offered, stepping out into the crisp morning air. Sheriff Fletcher dismounted first, followed by a dignified woman in her 50s, her gray-streaked hair pinned neatly beneath a practical bonnet. Her worried expression betrayed her attempt at composure. "Sheriff," Noah greeted, then nodded to the woman. "You must be Mrs. Owens." "Martha, please," she replied, her eyes fixed on the cabin door. "Is my niece truly all right? The sheriff said she was badly injured." "She's healing," Noah assured her. "She's just getting dressed. Please come inside." As they entered the cabin, Felicity emerged from behind the privacy screen Noah had rigged the night before using a spare blanket. Despite the bruises still marring her face, she stood straighter than she had the day before, the new dress giving her a measure of dignity. "Aunt Martha," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh, my dear girl." Martha rushed forward, embracing Felicity carefully. "When the stage didn't arrive, I feared the worst. Then the search party found the bodies." She pulled back, examining her niece's injuries with dismay. "What those animals did to you, I'm alive," Felicity reminded her, gripping her aunt's hands. "Thanks to Mr. Parker," Sheriff Fletcher cleared his throat. "Miss Owens, I hate to interrupt your reunion, but I need to ask you about what happened. Any details you can provide might help us catch these men." Noah offered coffee all around, and they settled at the small table. With remarkable composure, Felicity recounted the attack on the stagecoach, how 3 masked men had stopped the coach, shot the driver and guard without warning, then robbed the passengers. "There were 2 other passengers besides me," she explained. "An older gentleman and a young man who looked to be a clerk of some kind. They took our valuables then." She faltered, her hands trembling slightly. "They shot the older man when he protested. The young man tried to run and they shot him in the back." Martha gasped, clasping her niece's hand tighter. "Why do you think they let you live?" Fletcher asked gently. Felicity's expression darkened. "They didn't intend to. The leader, she swallowed hard. "He said I might be entertaining before they finished me off." But they were interrupted by the sound of another rider approaching. "They panicked, hit me again, and left me for dead. The rider must have taken another trail because no one came. When I regained consciousness, I started walking, staying off the main trail in case they came back." Noah's jaw tightened as he listened, a cold anger building in his chest at what she had endured. "Did you see any of their faces? Anything distinctive about them?" Fletcher pressed. Felicity closed her eyes, concentrating. The leader was tall with a scar across his chin. I saw it when his bandana slipped. Another had a missing finger on his left hand. The third was younger, maybe not much older than me, called himself Rattler. Fletcher wrote rapidly, nodding. This matches the description from the Cheyenne stage robbery. They call themselves the Blackjack Gang after their leader. Blackjack, Felicity repeated, her voice hardening. He's the one who took my parents' wedding rings and my mother's locket, said they'd fetch a good price. We'll find them, Fletcher promised, though Noah detected the uncertainty behind his confident tone. The territory was vast and lawmen were few. In the meantime, you should come to town with your aunt, Miss Owens. Dr. Harrison should examine you properly. Felicity isn't in any condition to make that journey today, Noah interjected, surprising himself with his protectiveness. The ride would be too jarring for her ribs. Martha looked conflicted. But surely she'd be better off in town with proper care, and Mr. Parker has provided excellent care, Felicity said quietly. And he's right, I don't think I could manage the ride to town just yet. Sheriff Fletcher studied the three of them thoughtfully. It might be safer for you in town, Miss Owens, on the off chance these men realize you survived and could identify them. A tense silence followed his words. I have my Winchester and my Colt, Noah said firmly, and I rarely miss what I aim at, Fletcher nodded slowly. I don't doubt your abilities, Parker, but it's something to consider. He stood, gathering his notes. I should get this information to the marshal. Martha, will you be staying or returning with me? Martha glanced at her niece, clearly torn. I should return to mind my shop, she said reluctantly. But I'll gather some of my things and return tomorrow to stay with Felicity. Felicity's expression flickered with something Noah couldn't quite identify. There's hardly room here, Aunt Martha, and I couldn't impose on Mr. Parker further. It's no imposition, Noah assured her, though the thought of having two women in his small cabin was somewhat daunting. Perhaps, Martha began carefully, when you're strong enough to travel, Mr. Parker could bring you to town. I have a spare room above the shop where you'll be comfortable. Relief washed over Felicity's face. That would be perfect, if Mr. Parker wouldn't mind the trouble. It's no trouble, Noah said, and it's Noah, remember, a small smile touched Felicity's lips. Noah, she corrected, her eyes meeting his. After the sheriff and Martha departed, promising to return the following day with additional supplies and clothing, a strange stillness settled over the cabin. Felicity sank back onto the bed, exhaustion evident in her posture. You should rest, Noah suggested, moving to the door. I need to check the horses. Noah, Felicity called as he reached for the latch. Thank you for speaking up about the journey to town. I know it would ease Aunt Martha's mind to have me there, but you're not ready, he finished for her. I understand. And you're welcome here as long as you need to heal. The days that followed established a quiet routine. Martha visited daily, bringing food, clothing, and news from town. Felicity's strength gradually returned, the bruises on her face fading from angry purple to sickly yellow. Noah taught her to play checkers in the evenings, finding himself enjoying her quick mind and occasional flashes of humor. A week after Felicity's arrival, Noah returned from tending the horses to find her attempting to prepare dinner, moving slowly but determinedly around the small kitchen area. You shouldn't be up, he scolded gently, moving to take the knife from her hand. I'm tired of being useless, Felicity protested, refusing to relinquish the knife. My ribs are healing and I want to contribute. You've done so much for me. Noah studied her stubborn expression, recognizing the pride behind it. At least let me help, he conceded. What are you making? A stew with the vegetables Aunt Martha brought yesterday. She gestured to the rabbit Noah had snared that morning, already skinned and ready to be cut up. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, and Noah found himself hyper-aware of her presence, the soft scent of lavender from the soap Martha had brought, the graceful movement of her hands despite her injuries, the way she tucked an errant strand of dark hair behind her ear. Tell me about your farm in Missouri, Noah said as they sat down to eat the stew, which had turned out remarkably well. Felicity's expression softened with memory. It wasn't large, 40 acres my grandfather cleared after moving from Virginia. We grew corn and wheat, kept chickens and a few dairy cows. She paused, her eyes distant. The house was white clapboard with blue shutters. My mother planted roses along the front path. Sounds peaceful, Noah observed. It was, Felicity agreed, until the fever came last winter. It swept through the county like wildfire. My parents, she swallowed hard. They were gone within a week of each other. Noah reached across the table, hesitating before covering her hand with his own. I'm sorry. Felicity turned her hand to grasp his briefly. Thank you. She withdrew, composing herself. After the funerals, I tried to keep the farm going, but it was too much for one person. When Aunt Martha suggested I join her here, it seemed the sensible choice. I sold everything, planning to use the money to perhaps open a small bakery or help in her shop. And now that money's gone, Noah said quietly. Felicity's chin lifted, that same determination flashing in her eyes. Yes, but I'm still alive. I still have skills. I can sew, cook, keep accounts. I'll find my way. Noah admired her resilience, so at odds with her still healing body. I have no doubt you will. 2 weeks after finding Felicity, Noah woke before dawn to the sound of her coughing. He rose quickly, concern mounting as he heard her struggling to catch her breath. Felicity, he called, moving to her bedside with the oil lamp. She was sitting up, one arm wrapped around her ribs, her face contorted with pain. It hurts, she gasped between coughs. Noah remembered Mrs. Harrison's warning about coughing up blood. Are you bringing anything up? He asked urgently. Felicity shook her head, finally managing to control the coughing. Just hurts, she wheezed. Noah poured a small measure of laudanum and helped her drink it, his arm supporting her shoulders. She leaned against him, trembling slightly as the medicine began to take effect. Better. He asked, reluctant to move away. Felicity nodded, her head still resting against his shoulder. I'm sorry for waking you. Don't apologize, Noah said firmly. That's what I'm here for. They remained that way for several long moments, the intimacy of their position becoming increasingly apparent to Noah. He should move away, maintain the propriety he'd been careful to preserve since her arrival, yet he found himself unwilling to break the connection. Noah. Felicity's voice was soft, drowsy from the laudanum. Yes, why did you really help me? The truth. Noah considered her question carefully. When I found you, you reminded me of a filly I once rescued beaten, abandoned, but with fire still in her eyes. I couldn't walk away then, and I couldn't walk away from you. Am I a horse in this comparison? Felicity asked, and Noah was startled to hear amusement in her tone. A very fine horse, he said, allowing himself a small smile. Thoroughbred stock. Her soft laughter warmed him more than any fire could have. You should try to sleep now, Noah said gently, easing her back against the pillows. Will you stay close? Felicity asked, her eyes already drifting closed, in case the coughing returns. I'll stay, Noah promised, settling into the chair beside the bed. He watched over her until dawn broke, his thoughts in turmoil. The feelings developing for Felicity Owens were unlike anything he'd experienced before, protective yet respectful of her strength, tender yet mindful of her independence. It was dangerous territory for a man who had long ago resigned himself to solitude. By the 3rd week, Felicity was moving around the cabin with greater ease, the binding around her ribs no longer necessary. The bruises on her face had faded to barely noticeable shadows, revealing the natural beauty that had been obscured by injury. Her hazel eyes, now both fully open, often caught Noah watching her, and he would quickly look away, embarrassed at being caught staring. Martha continued her daily visits, bringing news that the territorial marshal had tracked the Blackjack gang to Wyoming territory but lost their trail near the mountains. The stolen goods, including Felicity's family heirlooms, had likely been sold or traded long ago. Sheriff Fletcher says you should still be cautious, Martha reported one afternoon. These men have a reputation for eliminating witnesses. Noah's hand instinctively moved to the revolver at his hip. No one will harm her again, he stated, his voice leaving no room for doubt. Martha studied him thoughtfully. I believe you mean that, Mr. Parker. She turned to Felicity. Dr. Harrison says you should be well enough to travel to town by the end of the week. I've prepared the room above the shop for you. Felicity nodded, though Noah noticed she didn't meet her aunt's eyes. "Thank you, Aunt Martha. I'm looking forward to helping in your business." After Martha left, a strange tension filled the cabin. Noah busied himself with mending a bridle while Felicity sat at the table, absently tracing patterns on the wooden surface with her finger. "I suppose I should start gathering my things," she said finally, breaking the silence. Noah looked up from his work. "You don't have many things to gather," he pointed out gently. "Just what Martha's brought you." "True enough," Felicity agreed with a small laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Noah set aside the bridle, choosing his words carefully. "You know, there's no rush. If you don't feel ready to make the journey, it's not the journey I'm concerned about," Felicity interrupted, her gaze finally meeting his. "It's leaving here." The simple admission hung between them, pregnant with unspoken meaning. "Felicity," Noah began, but was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses, multiple riders moving at speed. Noah was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. "Get down," he ordered, his voice taut as he reached for his Winchester. "Now." Felicity dropped to the floor as Noah peered cautiously through the window. 3 riders were approaching, rough-looking men with bandanas pulled up to cover the lower halves of their faces. "It's them," Felicity whispered, having crawled to his side to look. "The one in front, that's Blackjack." Noah's jaw clenched as he checked the rifle's chamber. "Get to the back of the cabin. If shooting starts, slip out the rear window and run for the trees." "I won't leave you to face them alone," Felicity protested. "This isn't a debate," Noah snapped, his fear for her safety making his tone harsher than intended. "Now go." Reluctantly, Felicity moved to the back of the cabin, but Noah noticed she had grabbed the small revolver he kept in the bedside drawer. "Good girl," he thought grimly. The riders halted about 30 yards from the cabin. The leader, a tall man with a black hat and duster, called out, "Hello, the cabin, just looking for directions." "What can I help you with?" Noah responded, keeping the rifle out of sight but ready. "Heard there might be a woman staying here," the man replied, his casual tone at odds with the tension in his posture. "Stagecoach passenger, we're friends of hers, come to escort her to town." "No women here," Noah lied smoothly, "just me and my horses." The leader exchanged glances with his companions. One of them, Noah noticed, was missing a finger on his left hand. "Mind if we water our horses at your creek?" the leader asked, clearly stalling. "Help yourselves," Noah replied. "Creek's down the slope to your left." Instead of moving toward the creek, the 3 men spread out, clearly positioning themselves for attack. Noah had seen this maneuver before during the war. Divide attention, create multiple targets. "Felicity," Noah called quietly, "out the window. Now." A shot rang out, shattering the window beside Noah. He dropped to the floor, returning fire with the Winchester. One of the attackers cried out, clutching his shoulder as he fell from his horse. "Kill that bastard," Blackjack shouted. "Find the woman." Noah fired again, forcing the remaining riders to seek cover behind a woodpile. He heard the back window scrape open and knew Felicity was making her escape. Good, at least she'd be safe. A moment later, the cabin door burst open as the wounded man charged in, pistol blazing. Noah rolled to avoid the shots, came up firing, and caught the man in the chest. He fell backward, dead before he hit the ground. Outside, Blackjack was shouting orders to his remaining companion. Noah moved to the shattered window, trying to locate them among the scattered outbuildings. A movement near the barn caught his eye. The man with the missing finger was making his way toward the back of the cabin, obviously intending to cut off Felicity's escape. Noah aimed carefully and fired. The man stumbled, then collapsed. 2 down, 1 to go. Silence fell, broken only by the nervous whinnying of the outlaw's horses. Noah reloaded the Winchester, straining to hear any movement outside. Where was Blackjack? And more importantly, had Felicity made it to the trees? A woman's scream answered that question, turning Noah's blood to ice. He rushed to the door, rifle ready, to see Blackjack dragging Felicity from the tree line, his pistol pressed to her head. "Drop the rifle or she dies right now," Blackjack shouted, his bandana now pulled down, revealing the scar Felicity had described. Noah hesitated, calculating distances and angles, knowing he couldn't risk a shot with Felicity in the line of fire. I said drop it. Blackjack tightened his grip on Felicity, who winced in pain. Slowly, Noah placed the Winchester on the ground, keeping his hands visible. "Let her go," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Your quarrel's with me now." "My quarrel's with anyone who gets in my way," Blackjack snarled. "This little lady was supposed to be dead 2 weeks ago. Time to finish the job." "You'll have to kill me first," Noah stated, taking a deliberate step forward. "That's the plan," Blackjack agreed with a twisted smile. "But first I want you to watch her die." As Blackjack shifted his aim from Felicity's head to her heart, a shot rang out not from his gun, but from the small revolver Felicity had concealed in the folds of her dress. The outlaw's eyes widened in shock as blood bloomed across his chest. His grip on Felicity loosened and she wrenched free, stumbling toward Noah as Blackjack fell to his knees, then face first into the dirt. Noah caught Felicity as she rushed to him, pulling her safely behind him as he drew his Colt, making sure Blackjack was truly down. The outlaw lay motionless, the back of his duster showing the exit wound where Felicity's bullet had torn through him. "Are you hurt?" Noah demanded, turning to examine Felicity, who was shaking violently. "No," she managed, though her voice was barely audible. I killed him." "You had no choice," Noah said firmly, drawing her into his arms. "He would have killed us both." Felicity buried her face against his chest, her entire body trembling with delayed shock. Noah held her tightly, one hand stroking her hair as he scanned the surroundings to ensure no more threats remained. "It's over," he murmured against her hair. "You're safe now, we both are." They remained that way for several long moments, clinging to each other as their heartbeats gradually slowed. Finally, Noah gently pulled away. "We need to get the sheriff," he said. "Can you ride?" Felicity nodded, her expression resolute despite her pallor. "Yes, I can ride." Within the hour, they were mounted, Felicity on Thunder, Noah on one of his other horses, and heading toward Silver Creek. Noah had secured the bodies of the outlaws, collected their weapons, and tied their horses to follow behind. They rode mostly in silence, each processing the events of the day. Occasionally, Noah would glance at Felicity, marveling at her composure after everything she'd endured. The woman he'd found broken and bleeding just 3 weeks ago now sat straight in the saddle, her chin held high despite the lingering shadows in her eyes. Sheriff Fletcher met them at the edge of town, alerted by a rancher who had heard the gunfire and ridden to Silver Creek for help. "Miss Owens," Fletcher said, his eyes widening as he recognized Felicity. "Are you all right?" "I am now," she replied, her voice steadier than Noah would have expected. "The men who attacked the stagecoach found us. They're dead." Fletcher's gaze shifted to the bodies slung over the outlaws' horses. "All 3 of them," Noah nodded grimly. "Blackjack and his gang won't be troubling anyone else." "You did this?" Fletcher asked, clearly impressed. "We both did," Noah corrected, looking at Felicity with newfound respect. "Miss Owens accounted for Blackjack himself." The sheriff's eyebrows rose. "Is that so?" He shook his head in amazement. "Well, I'll need statements from both of you, but that can wait until you've rested. There'll be a reward for bringing in Blackjack, dead or alive. The territorial governor put up $500. The reward should go to Miss Owens," Noah said firmly. "She's the one who lost everything to these men," Fletcher nodded. "I'll see to the paperwork. In the meantime, I expect Martha's anxious to see her niece." He gestured toward the millinery shop where a crowd was gathering, Martha Owens prominent among them. Felicity dismounted with Noah's assistance, then surprised him by taking his hand. "Come with me," she asked quietly. "I don't think I can explain it all without you." Noah nodded, understanding her need for support after the trauma they'd shared. Together, they approached the gathering townspeople, who parted to allow Martha through. "Felicity, Mr. Parker," Martha rushed forward, embracing her niece. "We heard gunfire from the direction of your cabin. The whole town's been worried sick." "We're all right, Aunt Martha," Felicity assured her, though she didn't relinquish her grip on Noah's hand. "But it's been difficult. Over the next hour, in the privacy of Martha's sitting room above the millinery shop, Noah and Felicity recounted the attack and its outcome. Martha alternated between horror at the danger they had faced and relief that the men who had harmed her niece were now gone for good. "You'll stay here with me now, of course," Martha said when they had finished, patting Felicity's hand. "The room is all prepared and you'll be safe here in town." Felicity glanced at Noah, something unspoken passing between them. "Actually, Aunt Martha," she began hesitantly, "I was thinking I might return to Mr. Parker's cabin, at least for a while." Martha's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Return? But why would you want to go back there after what happened?" "Because," Felicity paused, searching for the right words, "because despite today's events, I've felt more at peace there than anywhere since my parents died." She turned to Noah. "If you wouldn't mind the company, that is." Noah felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. "I wouldn't mind at all," he said quietly. Martha looked between them, understanding dawning in her eyes. "I see," she said slowly. "Well, I can hardly object if that's what you truly want, Felicity, but perhaps we might discuss the propriety of the arrangement." Noah cleared his throat, suddenly aware of how their relationship might appear to others. "Mrs. Owens, I want to assure you that my intentions toward your niece are honorable. I would never do anything to compromise her reputation." "I know that, Mr. Parker," Martha replied, her expression softening. "Anyone can see you're a good man, but this town thrives on gossip, and Felicity has already endured enough without adding whispered rumors to her burdens." "Aunt Martha, I'm 24 years old," Felicity said firmly. "I've buried my parents, sold my childhood home, survived a brutal attack, and killed a man today. I believe I've earned the right to make my own decisions, even if they raise a few eyebrows." Noah admired her spirit, even as he recognized the wisdom in Martha's concerns. "Perhaps," he suggested, "we might reach a compromise. I have a small second cabin on my property, originally a line shack that I've been using for storage. With some work, it could be made comfortable. Felicity could stay there, maintaining her independence while having her own proper space." Felicity considered this. "That could work, and I could help with the horses, perhaps even learn the business. I've always had a way with animals." Martha sighed, recognizing she was outnumbered. "Very well, but at least stay with me tonight, Felicity. You've been through enough today, and Mr. Parker's cabin will need cleaning after what happened there." Felicity agreed, though she insisted on returning to the cabin with Noah the following day to begin repairs. As Noah prepared to leave, she walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said softly so her aunt couldn't overhear. "For everything." "No thanks needed," Noah replied. "I told you when I found you you'll heal slow, I'll wait." Felicity smiled, a genuine smile that lit her eyes for perhaps the first time since they'd met. "I'm healing faster than expected," she said, "and I'm glad you waited." The weeks that followed brought significant changes to Noah's solitary life. True to her word, Felicity returned to help restore the cabin after the gunfight. Together, they patched the bullet holes in the walls, replaced the shattered window, and scrubbed away all traces of blood from the wooden floor. The line shack proved more challenging to renovate, but Noah was surprised by Felicity's determination and practical skills. She revealed an unexpected talent for carpentry, having helped her father with farm repairs, and didn't shy away from the physical labor despite her still healing body. By mid-November, the second cabin was habitable, small but cozy, with a sturdy bed Noah had purchased in town, a cast-iron stove, a table and chair, and shelves for Felicity's growing collection of possessions. Martha had contributed curtains, bedding, and kitchenware, gradually reconciling herself to her niece's unconventional living arrangement. The reward money for Blackjack's demise provided Felicity with funds to replace some of what she had lost. Though the family heirlooms could never be recovered, she purchased a few necessities and insisted on paying Noah for the materials used to renovate the line shack, despite his protests. "I won't be beholden to anyone," she explained when he tried to refuse her money. "Not even you, Noah Parker." "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met," Noah grumbled, but his eyes held admiration rather than irritation. As winter descended on the Montana territory, bringing snow and bitter winds, Noah found himself grateful for Felicity's presence in ways he hadn't anticipated. The loneliness that had been his constant companion for years receded, replaced by a comfortable partnership that grew stronger each day. Felicity proved to have an intuitive understanding of horses, quickly learning the techniques Noah used in training. She took over the bookkeeping for his small business, revealing a sharp mind for figures that allowed Noah to focus on the work. He enjoyed most breaking and training the wild mustangs he captured from the surrounding hills. They established a routine, mornings working with the horses, afternoons tending to repairs and improvements around the property, evenings spent in Noah's cabin sharing meals and conversation. As Felicity's confidence returned, so did her natural vivacity. Noah discovered she had a quick wit and a rich laugh that warmed the coldest nights. One evening in early December, as snow fell softly outside the cabin windows, Noah found himself watching Felicity as she mended a tear in one of his shirts. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, the firelight bringing out auburn highlights he'd never noticed before. Her profile was delicate yet strong, her fingers nimble as they worked the needle through the fabric. "You're staring," Felicity observed without looking up from her sewing. Noah didn't deny it. "I was thinking how different you are from the woman I found half dead by the creek." Felicity set aside her mending, meeting his gaze. "I am different. What happened changed me." She paused, considering her words. "When I killed Blackjack, I thought I would be haunted by it, but I'm not. I feel freed somehow. As if by facing the worst, I discovered strength I never knew I possessed." "You always had that strength," Noah said quietly. "You just needed the opportunity to recognize it." Felicity smiled, the expression transforming her face in a way that made Noah's heart skip. "Perhaps, or perhaps I needed someone who believed in that strength before I could see it myself." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken feelings. Noah found himself wanting to cross the distance that separated them, to take her hands in his, to confess the emotions that had been building since the day he found her. But caution held him back. She had endured so much, was still finding her footing in this new life. The last thing he wanted was to pressure her or take advantage of her gratitude. Felicity seemed to read his thoughts. "Noah," she said softly, "when are you going to stop waiting?" The directness of her question startled him. "What do you mean?" "You said I'd heal slow and you'd wait," she reminded him. "I've healed. I'm whole again, stronger even than before, yet you still keep your distance." Noah set aside the bridle he'd been oiling, choosing his words carefully. "I didn't want to rush you." "After everything you've been through, I've been through hell," Felicity acknowledged, "and come out the other side. I don't need more time to heal from my injuries. What I need now is to live." She rose, moving to stand before him. "Unless I've misread the situation entirely and your feelings for me are not what I believed them to be." Noah stood as well, unable to remain seated with her so close. "You haven't misread anything," he admitted, "but I worried you might confuse gratitude with deeper feelings." "Gratitude?" Felicity repeated, a flash of indignation in her eyes. "Is that what you think this is?" "No," Noah said quickly, "but I needed to be sure you didn't think that." Felicity stepped closer, close enough that Noah could detect the lavender scent that had become so familiar. "Noah Parker," she said firmly, "I am grateful to you for saving my life. That is a separate matter entirely from the fact that I have fallen in love with you." The simple declaration struck Noah speechless. He had hoped, perhaps even suspected, but hearing the words aloud sent a surge of emotion through him unlike anything he had experienced before. "You don't need to say anything yet," Felicity continued, misinterpreting his silence. "I just wanted you to know where I stand." "I understand if you need time to." Noah found his voice at last. "Felicity," he interrupted gently, reaching out to take her hands in his. "I don't need time. I've been falling in love with you since the moment you opened your eyes and looked at me with more courage than fear, despite everything you'd endured." Joy bloomed across Felicity's face, banishing the last shadows of doubt. "Then why are we still talking?" she asked, a hint of mischief in her tone. Noah's laugh was cut short as Felicity rose on tiptoes, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened as years of solitude and weeks of restraint gave way to the passion they had both been holding in check. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Felicity Owens," he said simply, "more than I thought possible." "And I love you," she replied, "enough to build a life here with you if that's what you want." "It's all I want," Noah assured her, drawing her close again. As Christmas approached, Noah rode into Silver Creek with a specific purpose in mind. The small town had transformed for the holiday, with pine boughs and red ribbons adorning the storefronts and a towering Christmas tree in the center of the main street. His first stop was the general store, where he had ordered a special gift weeks earlier. Mr. Wilson greeted him with a knowing smile. "It arrived yesterday, Mr. Parker," he said, retrieving a small velvet box from beneath the counter. "Would you like to inspect it?" Noah opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring with a small diamond. It had cost nearly all his savings, but the thought of Felicity's face when he presented it made the expense worthwhile. "It's perfect," Noah confirmed, tucking the box safely into his pocket. His next stop was Martha's millinery shop. Despite her initial reservations about Felicity's living arrangement, Martha had gradually warmed to Noah, recognizing the depth of his feelings for her niece. "Mr. Parker," she greeted him, setting aside the hat she was trimming. "What brings you to town today? Felicity isn't with you." "No, madam," Noah replied, removing his hat respectfully. "I wanted to speak with you privately." Martha's expression turned knowing. "I see. Would this conversation have anything to do with my niece's future?" "Yes, madam," Noah confirmed. "I love Felicity and I believe she loves me. I've come to ask for your blessing to marry her." Martha studied him thoughtfully. "You're a good man, Noah Parker. When Felicity first arrived in the territory, I had such different plans for her: a proper house in town, perhaps marriage to one of the more established merchants or the banker's son." She smiled ruefully. "But I've never seen her as happy as she is with you, living that rough life out there with the horses and the open sky." "I'll always protect her," Noah promised, "and I'll do everything in my power to make her happy." "I know you will," Martha said softly. "You already have." She reached out to pat his hand. "You have my blessing, Mr. Parker. Welcome to the family." Noah's return to the cabin was delayed by a sudden snowstorm that forced him to spend the night in town. By the time he reached home the following afternoon, the sun was breaking through the clouds, casting a golden glow across the snow-covered landscape. He found Felicity in the corral. Working with a young filly, they had recently acquired a spirited chestnut with a white blaze that reminded Noah of the comparison he had once made between Felicity and a thoroughbred horse. She looked up as he approached, her face lighting with a smile that still had the power to take his breath away. "You're back. I was starting to worry about you in this weather." "Got caught in town when the storm hit," Noah explained, dismounting and leading Thunder toward the barn. "Stayed at the hotel." Felicity followed, her curiosity piqued by the burlap-wrapped packages tied to his saddle. "Christmas shopping," she guessed. "Something like that," Noah replied mysteriously. "How's the filly coming along?" "She's learning fast," Felicity reported. "I think she'll be ready for proper training by spring." They worked together to unsaddle Thunder and ensure all the horses were fed and watered before retiring to the main cabin as dusk fell. Noah had been planning this moment for weeks, but now that it had arrived, he found himself uncharacteristically nervous. As Felicity prepared their evening meal, Noah built up the fire and retrieved the small velvet box from his saddlebags. Christmas was still a week away, but he couldn't bear to wait any longer. "Felicity," he said, interrupting her story about the filly's antics, "there's something I need to ask you." She turned from the stove, a questioning look in her eyes. "What is it? You seem serious suddenly." Noah took a deep breath, then crossed the room to take her hands in his. "When I found you by the creek that day, I had no idea how completely you would change my life. I was content in my solitude, or so I thought, until you showed me what I was missing." Felicity's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Noah, please let me finish," he requested gently. I love you, Felicity Owens. Your courage, your strength, your kindness, everything about you. I can't imagine my life without you in it. He lowered himself to one knee, still holding her hands, and produced the velvet box. Will you marry me? Tears filled Felicity's eyes as Noah opened the box to reveal the ring. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, Noah Parker, I will marry you. Noah slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her in his arms, his heart overflowing with a joy he had never expected to find on the Montana frontier. Their wedding took place on Christmas Eve in the small church in Silver Creek, with Martha, Sheriff Fletcher, and a handful of townsfolk in attendance. Felicity wore a simple ivory dress that Martha had helped her make, with sprigs of evergreen in her dark hair. Noah, uncomfortable in his Sunday best but determined to do right by his bride, couldn't take his eyes off her as they exchanged their vows. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the preacher declared. You may kiss your bride. As Noah's lips met Felicity's, sealing their commitment to one another, he marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment, from a chance encounter with a battered woman on the brink of death to a love that promised to sustain them through whatever challenges lay ahead. The years that followed brought both joys and hardships, as life on the frontier always did. Noah's horse training business prospered, aided by Felicity's keen business sense and natural way with the animals. They expanded their property, building a larger home to replace the original cabin, which they kept as a reminder of where their story had begun. In the spring of 1879, Felicity gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Hope, whose arrival filled their home with a new kind of joy. 2 years later, a son followed, whom they called William after Noah's brother who hadn't returned from Gettysburg. On the 5th anniversary of the day Noah had found Felicity by the creek, they sat together on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the yard as the Montana sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if you hadn't found me that day? Felicity asked, her head resting against Noah's shoulder. Sometimes, Noah admitted. But then I remember what my father used to say, that the best things in life are seldom planned. Felicity smiled, turning to look at the man who had saved her life and then stolen her heart. He was right, though I doubt even he could have imagined how a man finding a woman covered in dust and bruises would lead to all of this. Noah took her hand, his thumb brushing over the wedding band that adjoined the engagement ring 5 years earlier. You healed, he said simply, and I waited, just like I promised. And I'm grateful every day that you did, Felicity replied, leaning in to kiss the man who had become her savior, her partner, and her love the man who had given her a second chance at life on the wild Montana frontier. As twilight deepened into night, Noah and Felicity Parker gathered their children and retreated into the warmth of the home they had built together, secure in the knowledge that some journeys, no matter how they begin, can lead to the most unexpected and beautiful destinations.